Hello everyone, and welcome back to this retrospective series on the legions and their Primarchs. I am the Dark Light Emissary, here to guide you on a brief overview of each of them, and what you can expect from them if you are new, and if you are not so new, some speculation on events regarding them and what I expect in the future on them. This episode is on the 17th Legion, the Word Bearers Legion, and their Primarch, the Urizen Lorgar, the Bearer of the Word. Now, this Legion, reviewing them a bit, I have to say that I believe they are one of the most important legions in the entire setting, because they are the foundation upon which the Horus Heresy even gets started. They were the first legion to fall to chaos and corrupt Horus. They did it all. And but before that, before they even got to that point, this legion was one of the largest legions and one of the most zealously enforcing of the Imperial Truth legions out there. They were known as the Imperial Heralds, and they were known for brutally taking over worlds and making sure that, you know, they followed to a T the new order before they left. And then once they found Lorgar, that same zeal was shaped into a worship of the Emperor as a god. And the Emperor, as mentioned in some of these other episodes, and if you're at all familiar with this era, the Emperor did not believe he was a god and did not want any worship as a god. But that didn't stop Lorgar and the Word Bearers Legion from changing worlds from whatever faith and government they were following into perfect theocracies worshipping the God Emperor of mankind. And eventually, after a very long time, and I imagine a few warnings that we aren't told about, the Emperor finally reprimanded this legion for going against his wishes about not being worshipped. The Emperor commanded Robot Goleman and the Ultramarines to strike one of their cities that they shaped, you know, in worship to the Emperor, and then they forced the Legion to kneel in the dust of that city, and Lorgar to be shamed before the Emperor in person, who told him, you know, stop calling me a god. And even to his face right there, Lorgar's like, you are a god. I'm not apologetic of that. You need to stop denying you're a god. But Lorgar eventually capitulated and said, okay, fine, I will no longer worship you as a god anymore. But Lorgar took this very personally, and it hurt his soul, I'd say. And it's important to note that this is another major fumble by the Emperor, along with the Thousand Sons Legion. Along with losing that legion, losing this legion was also a huge problem, because it is my belief that had Lorgar and the Word Bearers stayed loyal, it would have been much harder for the Chaos Gods to get a sizable amount of traitors on their side to then corrupt the rest and go after the Emperor. Because, as it turns out, faith is a very potent weapon against demons. And one of the biggest ironies about this legion is that they were the foundations for many of the things we see about Space Marine chapters in the 40k era. You know, like the phrase, blessed is the mind too small for doubt, comes from the Word Bearers. The holy book that the Ecclesiarchy that worships the God Emperor in 40k, the Lectito Divinitatis, was written by Lorgar as like a treatise on why the Emperor was God. And had that faith been channeled correctly and used, I mean, this legion was one of the biggest ones. It had close to 200,000 Space Marines in it, next only to the Ultramarines. Can you imagine if this legion would have stayed loyal, how much harder it would have been for the Chaos Gods to have done anything? Which is why, of course, they did go for this legion, especially after the Emperor bruised their ego, and why they turned them first. They were foundational to the heresy. And going along with that, one of Lorgar's right-hand men is someone that, if you ever dive into the subreddit with us on the Warhammer 40k lore subreddit, or anywhere lore is talked about, Erebus is the #1 enemy of anyone and everyone during the Heresy. Erebus is a huge specific foundational character to the Heresy. He's the one who basically started it all. He's the one who set up Horus being corrupted. He did a lot of the work. Lorgar did as well, but more foundational and slowly over the course of 4 decades. So keep that in mind. They hid their corruption from custodes assigned to their legion for 40 years before finally kicking off the Heresy in full force and having the Civil War happen. And so this legion was first corrupted by the Chaos Gods, and then they channeled their zeal for the Emperor to against the Emperor, and they have stayed that way ever since. This legion cut a bloody path through the Ultramarines' homeworlds in a Shadow Crusade. Lorgar led it along with Angron. That was probably one of their biggest contributions, along with just being the foundational legion for the Heresy to begin with, to the Heresy itself. Now, it's important to note that this legion, though, is not a monolith as far as chaos is concerned. At least during the Heresy, they weren't. The way Lorgar sees chaos and the way that Erebus and Corphaeron, the other major leader in the Warbearers, sees chaos is completely different. Corphaeron and Erebus want to use chaos as a personal power tool. They believe in its power. They are worshippers of chaos and have been before Lorgar was, and they're the ones who steered Lorgar in that direction. But when Lorgar stepped into the Eye of Terror for the first time and was guided around to different scenarios and realized that there was real gods that the Emperor lied about, Lorgar was not thrilled at this revelation. In fact, Lorgar was disappointed in it because, he could see, Lorgar is not stupid. He's a very intelligent being. He's a Primarch. And while he is a bit of a, faith-based Primarch and a bit dogmatic, he's still not stupid. And he can see that these gods are corrupting and fairly evil, and he's kind of disappointed in all this. And even in his book of Lorgar, he pens later, there's a couple lines you can read several places that say Lorgar's like, he kind of starts off his book saying, "I never wanted any of this. I only wanted to seek the truth out. And I found it. And this is what I found. And I believe that for humanity to survive, they need to worship chaos." That's what Lorgar believes. And Lorgar actually had a proof of concept of this. One of the other major characters in the Warbearers Legion is Argel Tal. And if you want to read about him and about a lot about the Warbearers, you need to read the novel, The First Heretic. Not only is it just a really good book, but it goes into the mentality of Lorgar, Erebus, and Argel Tal. And the important thing about Argel Tal is he is one of the first possessed Marines. He is united with the soul of a demon named Rom. And it's important to note, though, this demon does not override Argel Tal's will. It seems to share equally in his soul with him and give him guidance when he needs it, and also turn him into a powerful demon form in combat, which helps him, fight in some of the thickest fighting. Now, Argel Tal, another interesting thing is, even with this demon form inside of him, he, was hiding the Heresy along with Lorgar and the rest of the Wordbearers for that 40 years. And the entire time for 40 years, he had at his side one of the Emperor's own bodyguards, an Adeptus Custode named Aquilion. And Aquilion, along with a few other custodes, were watching the Wordbearers to report any bad news to the Emperor, which they never saw because the Wordbearers were that conniving and hiding of their corruption for that amount of time. It's pretty amazing they pulled it off for that long. And Argel Tal considered Aquilion one of his best friends. And it's just an interesting point that Argel Tal never really seemed to revel in the truth they found either. He seemed to kind of resent it as well. But he also felt it was important. So he was kind of on Lorgar's side of seeing things. Now, Erebus is your quintessential. I believe he set off the entire heresy, not because he thought it was in humanity's best interest, but because he believed it was in his own best interest. He would gain all the power and fame, and he had tons of ambition. Erebus has tons of ambition for Erebus alone and no one else, which is why he is enemy number one for any lore enthusiast, as well as nearly every character in the setting, whether they are loyalists or traitors. Everyone hates him because they can see that everything he does is for him, including Horus, Lorgar, eventually Karn, that we talked about a bit, Argaltal. Everyone can see that everything he does is for himself. Whereas with Lorgar, he is considered, at least by Magnus the Red, pretty selfless, and he truly believes in the mission to bring this enlightenment to humanity. I mentioned that Horus didn't really like the demons, didn't really like chaos for a long time, and you know, he would ask Lorgar, hey, do we really have to do this barbaric ritual? You know, like, this seems very primitive. I don't agree with it. And Lorgar's like, think of it as mechanics in a system. You know, you need to put something in to get something out of it. That's what we're doing, essentially. It's basically how Lorgar talked about it. Lorgar viewed the worship of the chaos gods as a means to an end, to achieve apotheosis for the human race, and also to defeat his father, who he saw as a liar now. But I do believe that Lorgar still saw the Emperor as one of the gods as well. He still believed that the Emperor was just denying his own godhood, while also now discovering these 4 chaos gods who opposed him and were much more willing to work with him than the Emperor was. I find that very interesting about him as a character. Lorgar is not considered one of the best combatants in the Primarchs, but he eventually comes into his own during the Heresy. He learns more about his own psychic abilities, and he does gain more confidence in his battle abilities. And it's interesting to note that he is told that he can kill Robot Golem in combat, but if he did that, it would blunt the Heresy somehow. So he didn't do that. And he was also told, interestingly enough, that he could not defeat Korax of the Raven Guard Legion, who we haven't talked about yet, but I'll bring them up a little bit later, why that's important. Now, the rest of the Heresy, the Word Bearers, you know, they take part in the drop site massacre. That's where they finally reveal that they are traitors and not loyalists anymore. They change their armor from a gray with carvings all over their armor to a scarlet red. And the Word Bearers basically are your quintessential Chaos Space Marines after this point. They are the ones that, you know, if you think of a Chaos Space Marine, they are kind of the poster child for it at this point. And they are an important legion through the rest of the Heresy up until they gather for the Siege of Terra. All the Chaos forces gather together, and Lorgar by this time actually sees his brother Horus as more of a puppet and not really able to lead the fight against the Emperor anymore. And I find that interesting because, you know, the Pantheon is backing Horus, and for some reason Lorgar, who worships the Pantheon, doesn't seem to trust their judgment on giving it to Horus, and so he was going to try to take over. It didn't work out for him, and so Horus banished Lorgar from being able to come with them to the Siege of Terra. So for all of his work and everything, Lorgar does not participate in the Siege of Terra, and neither does most of the Legion. So there's an entire Legion, like over 150,000-ish Marines, that leave with Lorgar and never go to the Siege of Terra. So that's just an interesting point. Only about 5,000 Word Bearers go to the Siege of Terra with Horus. Another interesting point really quick before I go to the siege regarding Lorgar again with his selflessness. Another interesting point is regarding Fulgrim. When Fulgrim was possessed by a Slanesh demon for a time, there's a short story where Lorgar you know, meets with Fulgrim and sees that it's a demon possessing his brother. And Lorgar gets very incensed over this and tries to push the demon out of Fulgrim and basically says to his other brothers, like, look, like, my sons are perfectly united with, demon kind to form a perfect union. Not, we shouldn't be letting the demons ride us like this, though. And so I just find that interesting too. Like, Lorgar, again, has a idealistic view of chaos, but he understands it really well. So I don't think he's necessarily wrong in his view, but doesn't mean that it's a view that we want to keep around, because chaos being what it is, it's not ascension. It's ultimately a deception. If we want to get into that a little bit here with who this legion is. So going back to the Siege of Terra now, basically the way the word bearers that came with with Horus and friends acted during the siege was as captains, really. A bunch of chaplains in this legion came with a head chaplain named Zardu Laik. And Zardu Laik, again, he's similar to Lorgar in that he believes in the overall plan of ascension for humanity with chaos. He ultimately is willing to sacrifice himself, whereas someone like Erebus is willing to sacrifice everyone else for himself. Again, they completely come at it from different angles, which I find fascinating, that, this legion is not a monolith of one type of belief. I find that very interesting. And so, like all of the other legions, after the Siege of Terra, any surviving forces of the word bearers fled the scene, and either they fled into the Eye of Terror on their own, or they relinked back up with Lorgar and the word bearers, who knows what they were doing during the siege. Maybe we'll get a book on that. And we know that Lorgar and his legion eventually did make it into the Eye of Terror and settled their own world on a world called Sicarius in the Eye of Terror. And for the next 10,000 years, they are a main thorn in the side of the Imperium. They have remained mostly the same structure and size and power that entire time. And so if there's any organized efforts behind fighting the Imperium, you're probably going to find the word bearers at least partially responsible for that type of fighting. In the current era, Corpheron and Erebus are the ones basically running the Legion, along with a Dark Council made up of other apostles and leaders of the Legion. And Lorgar, sometime during this era, between the Heresy to the modern 40k era, did ascend to become a demon prince of chaos undivided. And that's another important thing about the word bearers, is they did not fall to a specific aspect of chaos. They worship the entire thing as the pantheon. They see all four of the chaos gods as aspects of one super being called the primordial annihilator, basically. So they just see them all as kind of different aspects of one god, more so than individual gods. And that's another unique trait to them. And so they continue on like they much have since the Heresy. They probably find great irony if they know anything about the ecclesiarchy and them worshiping the emperor as they did, for wanting to destroy everything that the Imperium has built up over the millennia. The word bearers are the ones to, I guess, blame for that level of zeal and worship in the current Imperium. Except had they been on the side of the Emperor, I don't know what would have happened. I think that was a major blunder. Having such powerful faith-wielding Space Marines on your side in such numbers, along with a Primarch who is like that, might have blunted any heresy before it really got off the ground. And so that's kind of where we're at. There's some rumors and rumblings that with the current happenings in the 40k era, that Lorgar is back controlling his legion. He did for a time exile himself into a basilica and hasn't been seen for a long time. And he was actually chased there by Corax, which I had mentioned earlier. Corax had followed them into the warp, into the Eye of Terror eventually, and Corax hates Lorgar, despises him. And I'll get more into that in Corax's overview coming up here. But basically, Corax is not completely just corporeal physical form anymore. He's some kind of shadow demon or something, and he completely thrashed Lorgar in a fight and sent Lorgar hiding. But apparently Lorgar's out of hiding now, leading his legion. So we are ripe for a setup where Lorgar and Corax will fight again, possibly. Corax is probably going to follow him and try to take him down. So that'll be interesting. And Erebus is like the eternal cockroach. He's still around too. Let's hope that he meets his end sometime in 40k. I think everyone would celebrate on the 40k lore subreddit if that ever happened. But anyway, that's really it for this one. Again, I can really talk forever on these legions, I think. So I will stop this one here. Please like and subscribe for more. And as always, bring your light into the dark places. I will see you in the next episode for the 18th Legion. If that's not one of the missing legions without looking. Or 19th or 20th Legion. We've only got a few left to go here. So thank you very much for watching so far. And please give me some ideas for any series you want me to do after we do the legions and the missing Primarchs. I might do a little bit on them. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do after this, but I appreciate all the views so far. Apparently people are liking my way I'm doing this so far. And so please leave a comment on what you would like to see next. And I can also try answering some questions or anything like that in a video perhaps. So thank you very much. Have a great day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks.